My name is Reinhard Schaler. Most of you probably know me, some of you maybe don't. I'm the director of the Localisation Research Centre, and I would like you to feel very welcome at our 10th Localization Summer School. We were trying to count how many summer schools we did because we started 11 years ago, and I think we missed 1 year, so this is the 10th. Anyway, long time. And many things have happened in the meantime since we started. And we have tried out different formats of different things. This is the one that we settled on, and we pick one theme every year. And this year we picked mobile application development and localization, because mobile is something really big, and apps are really big, and they offer loads of opportunity, not just for localized but also for developers. And what I would like to do first is to introduce you to the program a little bit, introduce you to the speakers, presenters, and promise you that I think I'm the only one who's just going to talk, so you won't have to use your computer. This is just listening and contributing maybe a little bit. I also will give you, I'm just going to introduce the program, but I'm going to give you the opportunity maybe to introduce you very briefly. So you can think of 2 or 3 sentences that you want to use to introduce yourself very briefly, so that other people know who you are. We have a barbecue set up for tonight that Carl and Jer organized not too far away from this building, so it's on campus. It's more this afternoon, really. It's after we finish here. We have nothing organized for tomorrow, but there's this match on, I think. Where Spain is going to be really humiliated.
Current world and European champions, is it? Yeah.
So this is not only the 10th year of the annual LRT Summer School, it's also the 10th anniversary that Ireland participated in last time in the European Championships, So it's we try to keep this in June with really important events, other really important events. The other important event that is happening, just for, you might not be interested in this, but 80 years ago, I think, was the time when the first International Eucharistic Congress happened in Ireland. And I'm just saying this because I like to talk about those things with Chris. So this year it's happening again, and if you look at the program, if you look at the impact of it, you can see how Ireland has changed. It's amazing. There's some footage that you can look at how it was 80 years ago. Today it's difficult to see that difficult to see that it is happening because there's that's what it looks like. Anyway, so just a little bit about the Localization Research Centre. We were established in '95. We were initially funded by the Irish government. Decided on the mission, which is to provide content-rich information to the localization industry on future trends and technology. So we were trying to look ahead, and we were always, although we are based at the university, we are trying to and have been collaborating very closely with industry since we started. Most of the time we were funded by European project grants. Most of the time we had between 5 and 6 people working in the LRC. Over the last 5 years we have been involved a lot in the Centre for Next Generation Localization. It's a large centre project where 4 Irish universities and 10 industrial partners work together to figure out what next generation localization could look like. Some of our activity is to bring people together and to exchange knowledge and information at the International Journal for Localization Focus, the summer school that you're attending, the Internationalization and Localization Conference. That is happening for the 17th time in September, and we have the keynote announced, and the keynote is going to be Thomas Arendt, who's in charge at Twitter of Twitter's internationalization, localization, globalization activities. And Twitter have an amazing story to tell if you haven't heard it. For example, they're working with 500,000 volunteers who translate millions of words every day. It's an amazing operation that they've set up. and he's going to tell us a little bit about social localization and how they see it and how they organize it. You're running a Master of Science in Multilingual Computing and Localization, and not since 1997. Since 1997. And this year it's going to run for the first time as a distance learning program. So if you know people that are interested, but people who, for whatever reason, cannot come to Limerick for a year, oh, it's really, really nice here. It's a lovely campus. Some people say have said bad things about the climate, but it's not that bad. This is summer, so it's great. So people can do the distance learning course, and they don't have to attend here. It's for the first time. We're really excited about that, and we actually have some former students here who are helping us to set up. Madeline is here from Kilbray, who's helping us to set up a queue, and we're going to install and make available other software that people can access remotely. So this is our mantra, our mission. So we're the focal point at the Research and Educational Centre for the Localization Community, and we changed this from localization industry to community because I think localization activities go beyond the industry, and more they do so. Those are the people involved. Some people from CSIS, that's the Computer Science Department. That's where the university is based. These are humanities colleagues, and we have postdoctoral researchers, postgraduate researchers doing their PhD here, and staff, and I'm going to say it now, and I hope I will say it again at the end of the 3 days. Without Carl and Geraldine, the summer school would not have happened. So it's really their efforts to they put a lot of work into making this happen, to get the program together and sort out the logistics of it. I really can't thank them enough. These are the 3 days. You have seen the program. So after this session, we have lunch, and then in the afternoon we start with some practical stuff, some exercises, some demos, and that will continue tomorrow, where we'll work mainly with Alchemy Catalyst, and then on Friday mainly on the Windows platform. So tomorrow is more Android, and on Friday it's more Windows, and today is more kind of general introduction to the whole area. So just so that you know, I tried to find pictures, and some of those pictures are nicer than others. Some of those pictures are nicer than others. So this is Chris who's sitting there, and Aram is sitting beside him. The last section model of today is going to be presented by Lucia, who's also sitting here somewhere at the end here behind Aram. Tomorrow, again, this is what's I don't know how Enda manages to stay off the internet. This is the only picture I could find, and it must be 20 years old. So he's the managing director of Alchemy. He's not going to give the course, but I believe it's Eric Chubb who's going to be here. Is he here? So Eric is going to show us how to use Catalyst to work with localization of apps. And Ty is going to be here. This is also, I don't know how, but he's a student, so he should be all over the internet. He's a young person, he should be involved in all those social networks. But that's the only picture I could find, and I wouldn't recognize him if I met him based on that picture. But he's one of the, at least Ireland's, I think, leading developers of Windows apps, and that by itself is a phenomenon. And he's going to talk to us on Friday about Windows app development and but it's quite a mixed audience here. So some people are speaking all sorts of different languages like C++ and Java and Spanish and Turkish and Polish, and some people know and are have been involved in app development and mobile computing, and others are completely new. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge, and I guess that sometimes you just have to hang in there. and be patient, because some of the stuff that you're going to hear is probably going to be something that you've heard already, that you know already. Hopefully you'll hear it from a different angle that might make it a bit more interesting. Other stuff might be new. So you have 2.5 days, so we're going to finish early on Friday, and I hope it'll all be good. So if you have any question during those days, and because we're a relatively manageable group, you can always interrupt and always ask and make suggestions and whatever you feel like. So one thing that I'm new to mobile computing and mobile localization myself. So as a teacher, you're always a day ahead of the people that you talk to, or at least you should be. So I learned over the last week or two, I tried to familiarize myself with the world of apps and mobile computing and localization, not from a user's point of view, but from somebody that wanted to share some knowledge about it. And there were a couple of things that really struck me when I started to read about mobile computing and app development and localization. And I thought it would be a good exercise if we just listed a couple of things that you think are really different in mobile computing and the app world, the application world, small application world. And I just, if you throw them at me, not literally, but if you kind of say them out loud, I'll put them up here on the board and we try to organize them a little bit, because I think it's kind of interesting to see, what do you think, the mobile, how mobile is different, what makes app development and app localization so special. And if you can think of things that make mobile computing and app development and app localization different from computing as we know, desktop computing, I'd appreciate if you just throw it out, and I put it up on the board. There's a couple of things that came to my mind when I was reading. I was just it would be good to compare some notes before we start going through my notes. So, who wants to start?
Interaction mode. Not using a mouse or keyboard.
Touch screen.
Yeah.
Using screen space.
You always have it on you, I think.
Location awareness.
Yeah, I was going to add to that sort of location and orientation awareness. So where you are, what way you're facing, whether you're moving or not, all those things.
From the user's point of view, users will not be focusing on one application at a time. They may be taking calls or do other things. So I don't know how to phrase it, but
Unitasking, monotasking.
But monotasking. You want to do one thing at a time. Yeah.
Maybe multitasking.
Different platforms, different materials.
Different platforms.
Different materials.
And?
Nothing standard.
No standards.
In a way.
It's a good heading to have. Underneath that, I would put too, an interesting thing is that because the platform's so small, it suddenly means that single developers can actually write software that might sell, whereas before, if you break into the software market, you needed a team of people. But the platform's so small, it's easy to develop an app relatively. It can be a one-person job.
It's sort of cheap. Yeah.
Sort of cheap.
No entry level.
Yeah, low entry level might be good.
From a technical view, maybe size limitation.
Speed, please.
look at the screen that even the program must be very small. So
Memory footprint, if you want.
Just do the volume very quickly. Very short duration cycle.
Change the landscape.
How about cost? Apps are much cheaper than buying software.
It's either cheap or
it's free.
Yeah. I could basically pack in now. Because there are all those things that, that really came out. Just some examples. So to start with the last one, I started in computing and localization when I was working with Lotus, and we were doing Lotus 1, 2, 3 spreadsheet. Most of you probably don't remember, or haven't heard about, but at some time, long time, in prehistoric times, it competed with Excel. And we were comparing features and which features were better, which product was better, and at the end it turned out that the product didn't really matter. It was more the marketing thing that mattered, and Microsoft won hands down. But at the time, Excel cost £1,000, €1,300 to buy. It's incredibly expensive. So there's a big change. Another example of features here, with orientation and location. Location awareness means that depending on where you are, your device functions in a different way and can be really localized. And in the CNGL we've talked about, some people have talked about the person being the ultimate locale that you customize a program for. So locale is kind of the idea that you have a group of people sharing certain values and certain customs, but with those features, you can really make it much easier to bring it down to the person. One example that I heard yesterday from a company that is bringing videos to India about healthcare, and the example that the person used was showing mothers how to breastfeed. And they use videos, and they have videos in different languages, all on a very, very small, tiny SD card that you can put into an Android phone and distribute really, really cheaply to villages everywhere. And it's not written, so people don't need to be literate, but they can watch the video on a mobile device. And because it's location aware, it shows the video in the language of the location. I don't think that always works, because sometimes people speak different languages in the same location, but it's there are things there that you weren't able to do before. The other really important thing is that there's a low entry level. So people, I have some examples in a few minutes. There are people there who've had a very, very big impact in a very, very short period of time with a very, very small team. And that's another thing, and I found that fascinating. Same conversation that I had with a gentleman yesterday morning. That's what mornings do to you if you meet the right people. He was saying, 20 years ago he was working with investors that were kind of, what do you call those people that invest in companies?
Venture capitalists.
Venture capitalists. And he was working with a big venture capitalist from New York who was investing in IT companies and development companies. And 20 years ago he put, the projects that he was talking about were around $20 million. 10 years ago it was about $10 million. 5 years ago he started to look at $100,000, $200,000. And now this year, last year, and the year before, the last 2 or 3 years, he's giving out $20,000, $30,000 grants to people and just see what happens. And there were two examples. One was a summer school, and I was talking to him about the summer school that we have here, and we have to do something about this. There's a summer school in San Francisco, so next year you should go to the summer school in San Francisco. And they give every participant $20,000 to come up with an idea and to develop that idea. And you know, if they lose the $20,000, so what? But some of those ideas are really so cool that they take off. And they can't take off in the upper because the entry level is so low. There's another scheme in Chile about, above all places, where if you join the scheme, and this is a little bit like our MSc program, and we have to do something about our MSc program too, all the students that come there, they have to come there for half a year, 4 months, 4 to 6 months, and they all get, again, around $20,000, and they commit to be there, they develop something, they interact with their peers, and they come up with ideas. Nobody owns them, when they get the money, they don't have to sign an IP agreement. It's all open, it's available to anybody, and what they want is just facilitate creativity and get people going. And that is not possible. You don't need a large development team, you don't need $20 million to have an impact. You need very, very little money, very few resources to really become, as we will see, number 4 in the app world. So, all very, very different. So just, there are loads of different definitions of localization. This is mine. And the important thing here is that it is digital stuff. There's lots of people ask, what's the difference between translation and localization? In my mind, the difference between localization and translation is that localization is digital, which means that you have to extract the stuff that you want to translate. You have to put it back in. You have to then test it. You need all those tools. You need converters. Sometimes text that you translate is not just the meaning of the text, but the text has a functionality built in. All those things that don't exist, if you take a sheet of paper, it's this has no functionality. If you have if you have a digital device, if you have a mobile device, you can click on it, you can reshape it, you can put in links, you can do all sorts of things. You can start an application, and all that requires an effort that is not necessary when you just translate. And this reminds me that I will just pass this on here. And,
Except for a phone.
So the slides have changed a little bit, but we will make them available afterwards. And there's an article here by Nielsen that gives you an idea of the state of mobile apps. This is some background really. Again, you don't have to read this, I just put it up there so that you can follow up if you want to. And there are the sources that I use to put the slides together, and I don't quote the sources always on the slides, but they're all the slides and all the reports that I use to put the material together. So, interesting thing is there is an App Nation event every year. And it's huge, and it's sold out, and it's in America, and it's one of the biggest events in the field. This demo is Envision Mobile are 2 companies that do research and provide figures and background information on the mobile and app market. The same they're the same as Nielsen. There is a site called Cross-Platform Tools, and that's somebody mentioned that there's no standards, and there's a huge number of platforms, and that obviously creates some problems for the developers and the localizers, but also huge opportunities for cross-platform tools, and there's a report that available on this cross-platformtools.com site. Jose Palomares, who some of you might know, gave a talk at Localization World just 2 weeks ago on mobile app localization, and I use some of this material. And there is this is was a blast from the past. Brendan Clavin set up Claris. Claris used to be, or was the company that developed Apple software for the Apple. So when Apple did develop its own software, they had this other outfit called Claris. And Brendan Clavin set up the Claris localization operation in Dublin maybe 20 years ago, so 25 years ago, 20 years ago. And when I I was looking stuff up, I saw him giving a Google Tech Talk about app localization. So he's now in San Francisco and running a company that that offers app localization. And this Tech Talk is available. iMilk is a talk series that travels. The people that remember Slake here in Ireland, iMilk is the Silicon Valley equivalent where they just move around different companies and share good ideas. So you'll get this presentation. You don't have to write anything down. You can just you get all the links and you can follow them up if you want to. So this is the structure of the talk. Next each one of an hour or so. What is mobile all about? Some basic data about mobiles, mobile application and mobile computing, communication and apps. What are apps all about? What's going to happen next? And then some fundamentals about localizing apps. So these are all figures that are really mind-blowing. If you think about them, there are about 7 billion people in the world, and there are almost 6 billion mobile subscribers. So it doesn't work like that, because not every person has just one mobile device. But it means that a very, very large percentage of the world is using mobile devices, and that is very different from computers. So even laptop computers, never mind desktop computers, you can use in certain environments. So especially you can see that from the sales figures. The growth happens in kind of emerging economies. They're maybe not emerging anymore so much, but they have emerged. China and India. If you look at mobile figures and mobile growth in Africa, it's also phenomenal. And there is we had a talk by a colleague from Nigeria who was giving figures that were truly mind-blowing. There's an explosion of mobile use and mobile networks in Africa that is putting everything that's happening in Europe into the shadow. There are people saying that the time isn't far away when the mobile infrastructure in Africa is going to be better than in lots of rural parts of India, of the UK and the developed world. So, for example, we were working with another colleague that was converting files as we were sending files back and forth, and he was saying, sorry, I couldn't upload it last night because the internet connection is so bad. And he was not in Africa, he was at Lake Constance in the south of Germany. Things are changing. They're changing quite rapidly. They're changing the mobile market because it's so much easier. You can carry stuff around with you. They're much more accessible. You can buy an Android phone for
60
euro. 40. And they're little computers. They're not just phones. The fact that you can make a phone call with them is coincidental. It's not really, well, it's incidental, I guess. And that, the West sold mobile phones to Africa and tried to help to install mobile networks, and the Africans decided, well, you can make mobile phone calls, but you can also go shopping with it. So they invented, people invented applications that allowed you to use your mobile phone to make payments. And the funny thing is that then, that came back from Africa to the West, and now you can pay for your parking meters using your mobile phone in Dublin, for example, and many other Western cities. So there are things happening there that maybe 5 years ago would never have happened. Nobody would ever have thought that was possible to use phones for all those things that they're being used for now. Then there's a difference between the ordinary phones and smartphones, and the fact there is that smartphones are still in the minority. So people are saying, well, if you develop apps, if you develop for the mobile market, you shouldn't forget the straightforward, the non-smartphone mobile devices. But the future is certainly in smartphones. Smartphones that can do much more flexible, that can do many more things than are really computers. So with those smartphones, all of a sudden you have lots of web users that you couldn't count on before, that you couldn't connect with before. And again, it's Asian regions that are leading the field there, Korea, Japan. And even if you look at websites in general, almost 10%, close to 10% of website hits are from mobile. So if you have a website, if you're selling anything, if you want to share knowledge, information, if you want to set up an event, you really have to keep that in mind and make sure that you cater for mobile users. And very often you see that now more. Increasingly, you see this now that there's a mobile version of websites available that is easier to navigate using a smaller screen, and touch screens rather than keyboards. And it was still an estimate, but almost all of the new handsets are now web enabled. So there's a shift there from I think from desktop computing in general to mobile devices. It's not. I don't really think that there's a competition. I think in a couple of years, most of the communication, the exchange, the consumption of digital content is going to happen on mobile devices. And an indication of that is that it's no longer just even mobile phones. It's tablets. It's other sort of mobile devices that are kind of the crossover between phones and computers. The other thing that is very, very important is how to finance those. So one important aspect is that we mentioned already is that there's kind of it's cheap. It's a low entry, the low entry bar. So it's possible for very small teams to have a large impact. But it's also important to if you do that, and if you give the applications away for free or for very little money, you have to finance that. And one way of financing it, Google has shown the way there. They're the world leader in annual mobile ad revenue. Is that that people spend money on mobile ads and invest that way, and that's to finance those small teams that are developing the mobile apps. And that has big repercussions, not just on companies that are just targeting the mobile market, they're just working on the app market, but also very, very large companies like Facebook. You might have followed that story where when Facebook went onto floated their company and went into the stock exchange, and then nosedived, lost 25%. One of the reservations that investors had about Facebook was that they haven't managed yet to penetrate the mobile ad market. So if you use Facebook on your mobile, you don't see any ads, so they don't earn any revenues. And that is one of the biggest growth sectors. And if they're not doing that well, then their future doesn't look good. So mobile and apps are becoming crucial even for existing very, very large players. In relation to raising funding and inspiring confidence in their strategy. One thing that is really that I found interesting too was that I was actually trying to give the presentation. I was going to give the presentation on my Apple laptop, and that Apple laptop doesn't have. I bought this Apple device that you can use to control the screen remotely, and for some reason that doesn't work. But what you can do, you can download an app on your phone, and you can use your phone as a remote control for your laptop. And you also can use it as a remote control for your television set and for all sorts of other things. So, I started to download, and I didn't count how many apps I have. I have loads of apps. And because they're free or cost very little, I just download them when I see them. I don't think that much about it. But the problem that I'm having now is to find the right app when I need it, or even to remember the apps that I have on my phone. And I think if you hit that number here, I guess this is growing. If you have 40 applications on a small mobile device, it kind of it becomes difficult. And one of the things that I found really interesting was this: a quarter of the apps that people download, are never used again. So people download them and forget about them. So this is a little bit, I think, an indication also of the cultural shift generally. A lot of people in localization will tell you that content, most of the content is ephemeral. It's kind of, it happens, and the moment it's there, you move on. So quality, all of a sudden, is a very different question to look at. So if you translate the Book of Kells, and spend 20 years writing it in German, and all the colors and stuff, you don't make sure that you don't make mistakes, and you want to be really thorough about it. If you localize an app that has maybe 4,000 words in it, and will be downloaded 5 million times, but only rarely used until the next version comes up, and the next, and the next, and the next. And you can't afford to put that that effort in to make it really perfect. So there's and this is this is the same with information on the web, the same with things that you buy. You don't get them fixed anymore. You just get the next one. I remember when I was buying my first iPod, I went into an Apple shop. And I said, in my innocence, I went in and asked the person that was selling it. I said, I read that it was Creative Labs or some other company had a competing product at the time. I said, I read that that it's kind of better because you can change the battery. And an iPod, one of the things that was bad about the iPod was that you can't change the battery, and after a while the battery just goes, and then the device becomes useless. And the woman. The shop looked at me like as if I was from a different planet. She didn't understand the question. Because, by the time that battery goes, you'll have a different device. The next thing will come out. So you don't buy things anymore to last. You buy things to throw out when the next version comes along. And that's something that apps are the same. It's the same thing. Small little things. You use them and throw them away, and you move on to the next thing. There's no value in things anymore. It's all kind of, they're moving along and you move with them. The other thing about apps is, most of the apps, they're all consumer-oriented things. There's nothing in there about creating stuff, I think. So.
Have you been on the iPhone market?
It's about games, it's about news, it's about maps, it's about social networking, it's about music. It's not about doing things, creating things. It's about consumption. And I have the same, even on a mobile phone, you can say, well, this is so small, it's kind of difficult to type. Although I know people who can type really, really well and do all their email on their phones. You can say, well, whether they use an iPad or some bigger tablet device, and that kind of helps you to cross that barrier where it's kind of difficult to interact with it and create stuff. But from what I can see, most of the apps are for consuming things. You pass some time. It's for entertainment. It's for looking at news, looking at videos, playing stuff, maybe interacting with your social networks, and looking at the weather. So it's kind of moving from a point where people use computers mostly to create something, to write something maybe, to write letters or to write reports or to do calculations on a spreadsheet or to construct things, and most of the devices that are coming out now are not being used for that at all. They're used to consume things, and that's I think where maybe the barrier is going to emerge. That people who are producing stuff, I don't know, architects, writers, programmers, they're probably going to stay to a large extent on non-mobile devices, whereas the people that are using the applications are going to move away from the desktop-based applications in there to the mobile world. So when you look at the multilingual aspects of it, a lot of there's kind of a disjoint. Most of the applications are available in English only, but the biggest markets are in the multilingual world. So biggest growth figures are in Asia. Most of the iOS, so the Apple devices, are owned by non-native English speakers, but most of the apps available, by far, are just available in English. Now, that might not matter that much because a lot of the apps are not really, there's not much of a language barrier there. But it is a huge, I think, challenge and opportunity for the localization industry to tap into that market. You can also look at, if you look at the app download market between today and 2 years ago, there has been almost 20% growth in users from non-English speaking countries, and that is projected to become even bigger. So the proportion of English speakers downloading apps and using apps is going to shrink, and the proportion of non-English speakers is going to grow. And those figures roughly reflect what you would expect generally. So companies like Google, Microsoft, Apple, Oracle, they get about 60% of their revenues from international markets, if not more. So on the desktop, this figure here would be kind of true for desktop applications and desktop markets. So most of it would come, or does come, from outside of the English-speaking world. So what is mobile all about? So there's some kind of lessons that I took away. It grows faster than anything else. It grows faster in emerging economies. The biggest chunk of the market is outside the US, so there's huge opportunities for localization companies to get involved. It's more consumer-driven than creator-driven, and there are really new and different revenue models. So you can make a lot of money. People make money not by selling, not necessarily by selling the apps, but by raising revenues through ads. And the other last point here is, I'll come back to that again with an example, is that because apps are locale aware or location aware, the local market becomes much more important than the national market. So there are some apps that are really successful in one country, but are virtually unheard of in another country. So we're not at that point yet. It's much more diverse than in the desktop market, where everybody knows what Microsoft Office or OpenOffice. There are 2 or 3 Office type applications, and they're really known. And a lot of the desktop-based applications are, are not just, they're more kind of confined to professions or to domains rather than to countries. Whereas in the mobile market, the local use is really important. So, second part, a bit more about apps and how it's changing. So this is a slide that Nielsen had prepared for the App Nation conference last year. And it shows a few things. It shows that people don't spend that much more time, but they spend more time with their apps than on the web. They install many more apps every year. Smartphones are taking over a growing proportion of the mobile market. Android is growing for reasons I don't understand. It's a very different business model, and that is important to understand. Again, the devices themselves are, and the apps associated with them reflect that. Android. The top 5 apps are Facebook, YouTube, or were last year, Facebook, YouTube, Android, Market, Google Search, and Gmail. And people spend, this looks like very little, but when I read it, it was 10% more time every year on their mobile devices. And one thing that is really important, and that is very often by the people who push that out, is kind of overlooked, are privacy concerns. So, you know, with mobile devices you can do all sorts of things that you would never dream of or have dreamt of. And I remember another story, so it must be 15 years ago, so 10, 15 years ago, we were involved in the European Commission project, and they were doing this thing where they invited all the different projects and they tried to get something out of the interaction between the different projects. So I was sitting beside a guy that was doing terminology work for Interpol, the European Police Force or the National Police Force, and they were helping them to identify conversations about of drug dealers. So they had certain keywords and they were listening for them and they were putting them together and then homing in on them. And that guy was telling me that he can, that you can, and that was 10, 15 years ago, that you can turn a mobile phone into a microphone very easily. People know, I mean, we know now that terrorists never use mobile phones. Osama bin Laden never had a mobile phone, and there are good reasons for it. Because if you have a mobile phone, even if you switch it off, and people know where you are, they know what you're doing, and they can find out all sorts of things about you that you might or might not want to share. And the applications now can do that. So if you have an Apple, I don't know if you can do that on the Android, Chris, but if you have an Apple, if you have Apple devices, you can actually not just see where they are on the map, but you can also activate them. So even if they're switched off, so if I leave my phone somewhere, I can go to my computer and make the phone ring, even if it's switched off. I can see where it is on the map, and I can make it do things. So incredible stuff. And if I can do that, you can just imagine what somebody that is a bit more techy and has more access to the networks can do. And in Ireland, I don't know about other countries, but in Ireland they have used location data for murder trials. So they've convicted people because they were in a certain location at a certain time based on the information that they collected from the mobile data from the masts. Incredible stuff is happening all of a sudden. So it's not just terrorists that are being targeted by those drones. It's people. The applications where you can find your friends, you can see where they are, where you can avoid them. So you know which pub to go to, which pub not to go to. So if you want to find people supporting the Spanish team tomorrow, you can find that out and then go somewhere else. So incredible stuff. And privacy is for users is a huge concern, and it's growing. As people find out more about what really you can do with mobile devices and how it impacts on privacy. So the next few slides contain some examples. There's a lot of information on the it's really just there to show you that there is a lot. And it goes back to the diversity and the lack of standards and the huge array of device manufacturers, operating system developers, independent developers, and operators. And they're all kind of doing different aspects, they're covering different aspects of mobile computing. And it's very difficult to find your way through that. It's made it a little bit easier because there are some huge market leaders. So if you want to do something for mobile devices, you probably concentrate on Android and on the iOS for the iPhone. But we all know that Microsoft is trying very, very hard with Nokia, and things might change over time. It's important to keep your options open. So this is how the market is or was in August 2010. So that might have changed a little bit. My guess is that Android has caught up quite significantly. But there are two really big market leaders, and I guess the iPad has caught up as well. But what used to be when most of us bought our first mobile phone, I guess it was something around the Nokia maybe. And then if you wanted to have a mobile device, maybe you looked at palms, and they have kind of disappeared mostly, or are not that important anymore. If you come from the general computing world and you're used to Windows and Microsoft, and if you look at the mobile world, they're really struggling. They're almost not there. It is changing, but there's a new operating system that's coming out. They really focus on apps, but they're playing catch up. So if you look at publishers, there are some really well-known ones. You know, Google, Apple, EA is a game developer, GameLoft, TomTom is a device to find your way around different cities and countries. A lot of the developers are small and beautiful, you know, with a huge impact. Mobile devices and publishers have to be really, really careful about trends because things change a lot, and very many have a very strong local character. So one example here is a company called Outfit 7, and this is Outfit 7. Just was wondering why is it called 7, because there's only 5 there, maybe the other 2 took the picture. But it's a very, very small company. Was founded in just 2 or 3 years ago. And they come up with an idea of an application called Talking Tomcat. And they have it available now for Apple and Android phones. It took just 2 months to develop for the iPhone and 2 months for Android. They started selling it. Less than 2 years, a year and a half ago, and they had, you know, within a year and a half, they had more than 10 million downloads. Well, in less than 2.5 months, they had more than 10 million downloads, and they raised all their revenue through ads. And this is how it's going between different markets, you know, the iPhone, the iPad, and Android. And the amazing thing is, you know, that it took a small number of developers, you know, 2 months to reach more than 7.5 million people with an application that is free, but raised funding through ads, and became one of the leading applications when downloads in their market space. Another one are 2 guys from Amsterdam who got terribly annoyed by those vuvuzelas 2 years ago at this event that Ireland didn't participate in. Don't remember what it was. And it took them just 1 day to develop it, and they got, you know, more than 5 million downloads. And again, they raised revenue through ads. And it's incredible how a very, very small number of people in a very, very small period of time will reach so many people with the right idea. You know, there was an event, they linked to that event, something was happening to that at that event, you know, that was different. You know, a lot of people were talking about it, and they just hooked onto that. So they saw an opportunity, and, you know, it took them no time to take it up. So this is the publisher popularity rank from a year and a half ago in about 12 countries, and Outfit 7, which is those, you know, this the small company in Slovenia, is number 4, and, just after EA. So it's incredible what you can do, the impact that you can achieve with, you know, no impact. And that links back with this idea of giving people $20,000 just to do something and see what happens. And if you spread that among 20 people, you know, if you spread that among 20 intelligent people with good ideas, you know, motivated people, they're likely to come up with something that, if it takes off, if it covers a topic at the right time, linking into the right event, maybe linking to something that annoys people or got their attention anyway, like the Vuvuzelas, all of a sudden, you know, can have a huge, huge impact. Before that was impossible. You know, if you think about, you know, even what we teach here at the university, if you think about, you know, how people are taught to program, to approach projects. You know, if you think about funding applications, I was thinking about, you know, we are funded by the European Public, we're funded by the Irish government. It takes us, the CNGL, it took us 2 years to put the application for the CNGL together. 2 years. I mean, those things, you know, they last for a couple of months. You know, if it takes you 2 years to come up with the idea and then 5 years to execute it, you know, I mean, it's impossible. You know, it doesn't work. They're different worlds and the different approaches, and what we are teaching and what we're doing, you know, doesn't really match, doesn't gel with the reality of mobile computing. And if mobile computing is the future, if this is the growing market, then we're doing something wrong. We have to really seriously rethink how we do stuff. So another application, this is the last example, is you might, I don't know whether you know that taxi meter. No, you have but apparently, this is the third most popular free app was 2 years ago in Turkey, but didn't even appear in any other country. So there are applications there and apps that are really, really popular in some countries, but are virtually unheard of in others. And you can make an impact. There's local applications, and it's a low risk because if it doesn't take off, well, it doesn't take off. You can try again. One thing that is growing a lot, and that links into the idea of the large variety of platforms and stores, is that people have started now to develop cross-store. So people don't develop just for one platform anymore; they develop for 2 or 3 platforms, and that also obviously has an implication on localization and the localization tools that are being used. That also is reflected in the program at summer school because we're doing generic introduction today, we're doing Android tomorrow, we're doing Windows on Friday. So there's there's loads of different operating developers, operating system developers there, and the one that are truly taking the lead there are Android and iOS. And Windows, HTML5, WebOS, HP-driven stuff are really quite behind. But there's a huge variety there, and if you want to make sure that you reach the largest number of users, you have to be sure that you don't just develop for one platform anymore, but for several ones. That is also different from the desktop market, where most people would have gone for Windows up to now. So store fragmentation is a reality and will grow. So it's important for people to be aware of that and to develop not just for one platform or for one store. There are other devices entering the app market, so it's not just phones anymore, it's tablets and it's maybe even TVs now, where you all of a sudden can interact with your TV, and the TV becomes a computer screen. And it's really important to attract developers, and it's something that's going on at the moment in the Silicon Valley, where Google and Apple are fighting and outbidding each other for the smartest brains and for the best developers. And that obviously is also the case around the world, where people, very small teams have to make up their mind, which platforms they develop for. So your platform developers have to offer you good development platforms, good environments, and best market opportunities to the developers to track them. So, in summary, for the second part of the 4-part presentation this morning, small developers can have a huge impact. App markets are very location and trend sensitive, and we said that at the very beginning too. Multi-store development is very important. And small developers need to be facilitated as much as large developers, because small developers can have a huge impact. So even a 4-team big or sized development team can get up to it can become the 4th biggest or most downloaded app. And the idea is really you can't fight the multi-platform development. You have to embrace it. So what's going to happen next? Yesterday and the day before, I was at there's a big European project called LT-Web, and there was a multilingual web workshop, and it was all about standards and interoperability and exchange. And a lot of people in the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, that is trying to standardize the web and make it multilingual. I talk about HTML5, they're introducing new features for local lines into HTML5. And some people have heralded HTML5 as the future of mobile apps. So it is promoted by the W3C, by the World Wide Web Consortium, and by another consortium called Web Hypertext Application Technologies, or WAP. the idea is to standardize and to cross the barrier between your desktop and mobile apps, just to focus on apps and make them workable on whatever platform you prefer at the time. And that is something that you can, if you don't use Windows, but if you use if you use Apple computers, for example, you can have apps on your Apple, and the new operating system, Windows 8, will have a much larger presence of apps than before. So the idea is that where before you used apps and content on specific devices, on specific operating systems, the future is going to be one or two slides on that too. Seems to be where people can access and do whatever they want to do on whatever device they choose at the time. So you don't. It's really, some people have said this idea of cloud computing. The future is cloud computing, and other people say, it's really the past is cloud computing, where you had central servers and you just had terminals to access computing power and content. But most people do that now. So they have, most people access content on Dropbox. A lot of people access their content on Dropbox. They're running applications that are not really on the device, and it doesn't really matter whether you use your iPhone, your tablet, or your laptop, or your desktop computer. You can work with the same content, the same applications. So there's different developers, and lots of them are really, really big, like Google, Facebook, and Apple, Microsoft, obviously. Adobe, and they all have their own motivation to push HTML5. So Apple obviously there's this ongoing war with Adobe about Flash and using Flash or not using Flash. Facebook, to break down this Apple Google silo and get rid of Adobe. Windows and Microsoft to push apps more into Windows 8 and get more attention for the Windows operating system. There's lots of advantages in there for lots of companies, and that is maybe a good indication that HTML5 will be successful. At the moment, so this is a test that was carried out by HTML5test.com last month, and they tested different operating systems and wanted to find out which one had implemented HTML5 to which extent, and Apple and BlackBerry. BlackBerry is maybe not so important, but there's a difference between iOS and different Android versions. But I guess they're kind of catching up, and the newer versions are very, very close. Another very important and interesting phenomenon is Amazon, and so is the Amazon browser, or version of a browser, where Amazon started a very, very different business model. So they started as a retailer really, and all of a sudden are selling devices and using the device and the information that can connect from those devices to grow their business. So this multi-platform development encourages and makes happen an explosion of tools. So there is kind of a gold rush for apps, but a second gold rush for cross-platform tools, and that makes things around localization and for localizers and developers obviously a bit more difficult. So there are the development platforms that are trying to deal with the fact that there's such a large variety of operating systems, there's a lack of standards, and the tools are trying to reach that problem. So from an app rush, you're coming to a tools rush where all of a sudden you have lots of different tools that allow you to develop cross-platform for different shops, for different operating systems, all in one go. But this is what I just talked about 2 minutes ago. There's a kind of another mobile that is not really, hasn't really been seen as a mobile device so much, but it's really catching up. And in a way, there are two tablets. So one is the Apple iPad, and the other one is the Kindle Fire. And the two tablets that, I mean, tablets have been around for years and years and years, and all of a sudden, those two tablets came along and they, the market exploded, and both, between those, they have 3/4 of the market, share, and in the market where others are struggling. And the question there is why. And without going too deep into this, because for localization, for development, it's not so important. It's important to understand what the concept behind that is I think, and the concept behind it is that they're both having kind of two different business approaches to it. So where Apple's core business was devices, and Amazon's core business was the store, and lots of information on credit cards and customers. So they use those devices for not by themselves, they're not standalone things, but they combine content technology, devices, and retailing, and that is why they have been so successful. And other devices and other companies who have been trying to just offer the device by itself have failed, and the reason is that they didn't combine other core interests with it. So the future in the way of mobile devices, many people believe is in here, where you have one ecosystem. Again, what I said a couple of minutes ago, where you don't have one device anymore with loads of apps that you could upload to your device, but where you have an ecosystem where you have different screens, different devices, and all your stuff that you want to work with is in the middle, and you can access that whenever you want, wherever you want, in whatever form you want it, and it's experience and it's roaming. And the other important point is there that it's no longer just smartphones or telephones, but it's moving to tablets and it's moving to television screen. And some companies are embracing that, a lot. And what analysts are saying is that those are going to be the market leaders in not just the mobile computing, but in the computing space, where mobile just becomes one of the many different ways that you can use to access your content. Whereas the other companies that are just focusing on one of those verticals are going to be left behind. Just as a remark, a very short one, is that there is a huge market in accessories. So people are selling, I found that figure astounding, 32 billion. That is more than the whole of the localization industry is supposed to be worth. So the localization industry is supposed to be worth $30 billion in terms of services per year. And some people believe that is exaggerated. But if you compare that with a market of 32 billion just for accessories for mobile devices, it's incredible. Another outlook, another future development is that you can now you could use voice for your telephone at the beginning. The next step then was a voice application on your telephone where you could use your voice to make your phone do something, or you could write something out. You could do dictation. So voice became kind of an application, or was covered by application. The future is that the voice gets blended into web and mobile devices, and you can mash up voice with other kinds of applications. And there's a new website that's still in beta. It's called IFT. And IFT stands for if this then that. And you can set up if you've been working. When I saw that, I thought, my God, you've been researching workflows in the IRC for the last 4 years. And there's a workflow engine, and you can do it very, very easily. You can say, well, if this happens, then do that. And it's very simple, very easy, and they call that recipes. So you can set up recipes, and there are more than 450 recipes set up already, and just mashing up phone calls with internet services. So you can say if my mother rings, then don't answer, or something like that. And it does it, and it's incredible what you can do with a very, very simple recipe, with a very simple mashup of very, very simple workflow. And all of a sudden, you use voice not as a voice application anymore, but as a mobile device, as a mobile application, because you can connect different services together using this very, very simple to use interface and all those pre-produced recipes or simple workflows. So there are some recipe calls, how to find my right phone, voice memory, sticky situation. So, some people organize phone calls at certain times and they're with certain people so that they can say, "Oh yeah, sorry, I have to go." So what's going to happen next? Well, most of that stuff we know. People have called this year the year of the app, which is going to be followed by the year of the cross-platform too. I think there's a kind of a convergence and mashup of different technologies, and so I don't think there's going to, what the analysts are saying from what I read up was that there isn't going to be any groundbreaking technology by itself, but the groundbreaking stuff is going to be is that things are going to be mashed up, they're going to be connected very easily with each other, and that's going to allow you to do things in a very, very different way than you can do them today. So, this is where you came. I'm going to, it's not going to be very long because this is going to provide you with an overview of what to look out for when you localize apps and what is important in relation to localizing apps and mobile applications. You're going to do it in the afternoon. You're going to develop an application and you're going to see what the issues are to look out for, and you're going to experience it tomorrow and on Friday on different platforms. The important thing is, so some of the important things and the important developments that I mentioned in the mobile world and in the app world are obviously also very, very important for localization. So if an app has a very short life, if it's very small, if it needs a fast turnaround, that has an implication on how you organize your localization and how you localize things. Because you can't spend a lot of time making sure that the quality that works on all the platforms, that there's no bugs in there. So when you do something that is very small and has a very fast turnaround time, you have to approach it in a very different way. So in principle, localizing mobile apps is not very different from localizing other applications or desktop-based applications. So you still have to use, you translate resource files. The files have different names. You still have string files. The files have different names, extensions. They come in different formats. But if you think about the XML and the text files, this is something that is described in form, I guess. You still have to deal with images. You have content files. You have help. So in principle, it's not very, very different. What makes it different is what we said at the very beginning here, that you deal with restricted screens and different operating systems that deal with the restricted screen space that you have in different ways. So on some devices, you have, for example, the space doesn't move. You can't scroll up and down. You can't move left or right or top down. You have absolute coordinates, so things are going to be put into one specific space, and you can't move them around. And that makes it for localization when you change the string length and when you deal with different languages and then you have to replace pictures, that places restrictions on what you can do. On other devices you have more space available and the layout is a bit more variable. So you can also can move things around. You can scroll up and down. In that case, you're almost dealing with a book. You can just add a page to it, and you can move on. If your one string is a little bit longer than another one, it doesn't really matter that much. For other platforms, you need specific equipment. So if you want to, in that case, if you want to write or localize an app for Apple for iOS, you're best off to use a Mac. People say you don't necessarily need to, but they advise you to do that. So there are different restrictions, restrictions on space, on translation guidelines that you have to set up, and also on equipment that you should use to not just the software, but also the hardware that you should use for localizing specific apps. There's one big difference between Android and iOS, and that is that Apple has always been very strict about what they do, and it's all very controlled. There's a limited set of devices. There are very strict guidelines on how to put things together. In the Android world, that is very, very different. So you have many, many more devices. You have many different ways of doing things, and in a way, you could probably compare Android more to the Microsoft world, where you have different ways of doing things, and people have more liberty and can use different hardware, for example, that has implications for the delivery of the content. On the Apple, it's much more controlled, it's much more restricted, and in a way, it's easier. It's also probably more stable. In terms of localization tools, if it's text, you could, if you're not particularly fussy about your environment, you could just use Notepad if you deal with text files. A lot of CAT, computer-assisted translation tools, and I had to look up TENT. Who knows what TENT stands for?
Environment.
Yeah. Does anybody else know that? I've never heard about that before. So there are TENTs. If you Google TENT, you have to really go deep down to find what immediately you're looking for, because all the first 2 million hits are all about the real TENTs. Okapi is an open source set of tools that converts between mainly conversion between different file formats. Obligati is an open source translation memory tool, but there are also many other tools providers that have a translation environment tools that have incorporated specific features for mobile apps and the localization of mobile apps. One of those we're going to work with tomorrow with Cantilist. As always, but those issues are not really, if you're localized, if you have localized before, a lot of the issues that are related to language are not really that different. When you always have to deal with issues around string length, you always have to be aware of acronyms and abbreviations and all those things. So there's not really anything new there, only that it is maybe more pronounced. In terms of saying the style terminology and total, who do you aim this at? This is the reason why a lot of people don't use professional translators to translate games, because professional translators are not the right people to translate games into another language. It's much better off using gamers who are really into the stuff and know what they're talking about. But that is, I don't really think that those issues are really very particular or very different in the mobile world than they are in the desktop world. In relation to testing, maybe it's a little bit different, because you need to test the localized content on the devices, and if you don't have the devices, you need simulators, and especially I think if you deal with the Android world, where you have hundreds of thousands of different devices, different types of screens, different types of delivery systems, basically, or different delivery devices, you will not be able to test the content on all the different devices. So you're kind of restricted in the way that you can test using real devices where you would actually see what it is like and what it would appear like, which is better than simulators, which are not genuine in any way in their behavior. So the last 2 or 3 slides are about the different views on how people look at mobile or localization. So this comes from Jose, who said, the people that he's dealing with, the developers, they tell him, this is only 430 words, but we need it in 8 languages. So give us a volume discount. And they send updates all the time, and they want, for the day, they want the updates back. They will, they say, well, we'll extract all the text for you, so don't worry about the other stuff that's in there. We know what you need to localize. And if there's anything else, we send it to you on email. And if you have ever localized, your heart is sinking, and you will recognize all the stuff. It's the path to disaster, really. They promise you a full working test build for a certain date that you will never get. And then they say, if you need any context, just ask us. They will never answer you. And then this is the letter that Jose wrote to the developer. So please don't try too hard, too hard to help. Send me your native files and I will deal with them, so I know what I'm doing. Comment your strings and answer your queries. Answer the queries that we have. Don't tell us that we will get back to you and then never do. But take your time to do that and send your test builds time to run. The reason why people have to get involved is not really an option, I think, in app and mobile localization is because it's a huge, huge market. And a lot of the few apps that are translated very badly. So there is there's a huge opportunity there to get involved. It's a huge business case. And it says there, this is from Jose too, he says 40 plus languages. I think that's just the start. If you think of the ideas that we put up here on the board, that we'll try to discuss and pick up a little bit over the last hour, that they're cheap devices, that they're locale aware, that they can deliver content automatically, just extracting knowledge from their environment about the users. There's huge opportunities there to deliver really great content that people are looking for in many, many different languages in a very, very cheap way. So, what I mentioned at the beginning of the videos to tell people mothers how to breastfeed, to deliver that to Indian villages, would have been impossible a couple of years ago. With an Android device that has an SD slot, it's very, very easy. It's very, very cheap. Another example, this is the last example from my breakfast meeting yesterday morning, is that Stanford University had a course in AI, and I haven't looked that link up yet, but if you're interested I can send it to you. So they offered a course in artificial intelligence, and they had 200 students. Of course, Stanford is quite expensive, and they had great lecturers from the Bay Area and Silicon Valley to deliver lectures on people leading engineers from Google and were involved, and they thought, well, if you do all this, maybe we make that open. Maybe we make it available to students who might not be able to attend in person, but might be interested in the topic. So we won't give them a degree. We will just give them. We do some tests at the end of each section or session, and we give them kind of a certificate of accomplishment. And Stanford agreed, and they said, we just launched this. It was last year in June they launched it, and they thought maybe we got 10 times what we have at the moment. So they had 200 students. They thought, well, maybe they get 2,000. And by September, when they started, they had something like 140, 150,000 people signed up to this course. So what they did is they chopped the talks that they had into 3 or 4 minute YouTube type videos, put them up on YouTube, and for each of those clips they added a questionnaire, and they evaluated the questionnaire. And then 2 things happened. One was that all of a sudden the videos were translated. into, I think, more than 100 languages. And they got one example of an email that they received was from a guy in Bangladesh who said, people here in my country have been dying for the right to speak our language. It's spoken by tens of millions of people, but we have never ever had any quality content available in our language, for teaching purposes at university. So thank you very much for facilitating this. So that was just one example of feedback that they got. The other thing that happened was that they evaluated at the end, who performed best on those questionnaires that they had at the end of each video clip. And there were, I think, 150 people that had no fault in their answers. So that answered all the questions correctly. And none of the 150 people were from the US. I don't know what that says. But it's just an example of things that you can do. Using mobile devices, using delivery systems that after very recently you couldn't have even dreamt of, where you can do localization in a very distributed way, and they can have an impact on hundreds of thousands of people in a way that you could never have even dreamt of before, and at no cost. I mean, there was very, very little investment necessary to make that happen. A lot of people put a lot of work into it, but there was no money transaction. So the last, this is the tips from the professional. Some tips from the professional. Forget about the word counts because the small numbers, small word counts on small screens on different devices, require a lot of work. So the developer that is looking for a discount because into 8 languages, and you have to tell them no. Focus on testing and focus on collateral. So go beyond the actual application, but look at the other material that comes with that application, like data about the marketplace, help documentation, and web links.